Hi guys, welcome to the Astro. Today's video, I'm going to be interviewing Marshall Eubanks, who is the co-founder of Space Initiatives, which is a company that's working on satellite technology. He's also an MIT graduate, and he's also worked at Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the US Navy. So enjoy the video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. And if you already have, then you're just awesome. So enjoy the video. And So tell a bit about yourself and how you got interested in the STEM field and in space.
Well, my name is Marshall Eubanks, or Thomas Marshall Eubanks. I never used the first. Never did. My parents never did. I grew up in the space age, basically. From when I was a little kid, you know, all the talk was about going to the moon, the Sputnik, the Russians, the Americans, you know, Gemini and Apollo and all that kind of stuff. And I was always fascinated. I literally cannot remember a time where I was not fascinated by space and science and stuff. And I remember I was about 8 or 9 and my parents had a little party and they had some people over, and one of the guys asked me, "Now, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "An astrophysicist," which is not too far from what I am.
So what was your experience like at MIT?
Well, MIT is like drinking from a fire hose, right? There's a lot going on. MIT is also, I mean, I don't know if you're thinking of going there or not. MIT tends to be humbling, right? A lot of people go to MIT, and I was sort of one of these, and they're always like they're like a star in their high school, right? They're the best guy at space, or the best guy at physics, or the best guy in math, or whatever. And they get to MIT and they're just one of the, you know, one of the maths, one of the pools. And that's very hard on some people. It wasn't too hard on me because I was never really the best at everything. But you get some guys there who are, you know, quite hit by it. They come out and all of a sudden they're not number 1 anymore. They're number 35 or 400 or something. But I enjoyed it a lot. I had a great time at MIT overall.
So
that's how I mean, I was taking a class called 12115, I think, which was planetary physics and chemistry. It was taught by two professors. Erwin Shapiro was one who taught the physics part, and John Lewis, who you might have heard of because he's talked a lot about asteroid mining, was the other one, and he taught the chemistry part. And I did very well on a problem, on one of the problems I'd had in celestial mechanics, where I actually, you know, you were supposed to solve it one way, which is fairly complicated and used a bunch of equations, but I saw there was another way to solve it that only worked for that particular problem, but it worked. And, you know, so I solved it in like 3 lines or something like that. And he was impressed. And so I actually asked him for the chance to interview with him. Instead of him asking me, I asked him, can I, you know, and so he found the time and I went and interviewed and I said, you know, I'd like to work with you. And I wound up working with him for many years. I don't think that's how it's typically done, but that's how I did it.
Oh, cool. What was your experience like at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory?
Well, JPL is also like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, JPL is a really amazing place. It's like, you know, you're with this people, very smart people, and they are dedicated. I mean, it's a very spacey place in that sense. Most places you go to, that I've been to at least, there's a bunch of people doing stuff. There's, you know, not everybody is focused on like the planetary, you know, exploring the planets and all like that. But at JPL they are, and it's really pretty amazing that way. And I very much enjoyed my time at JPL. I left JPL really because my wife and I had never bought a house, and we were thinking about buying a house, and that makes you think about, well, where do you want to live and how long do you want to live there? And, you know, and our parents, both of our parents were on the East Coast, and we decided with the kid coming, you know, we should probably be back on the East Coast. And so I moved back to the East Coast. It wasn't because I didn't like JPL. It was just sort of that family thing where, do I want to spend the next decade here in LA or not? And I decided, well, probably not. So I moved to the East Coast, where I've been since.
What were the biggest engineering hurdles that you encountered at Jet Propulsion Laboratory?
Engineering hurdles?
Yes.
Well, the biggest hurdle I encountered was actually political. I was there at a very sort of down time for JPL. The Voyagers had launched, and the Galileo mission was supposed to have launched, but it kept getting delayed, both because of problems with the mission. Galileo was a mission to Jupiter, big mission, a Cassini type mission. You know, school bus sized spacecraft going to Jupiter. And it was delayed and delayed again. And then it was supposed to be launched by the space shuttle, and the space shuttle kept getting delayed. And then the Challenger accident happened and it was delayed again. And it never did launch while I was there. And no new missions, basically, no major new planetary missions were proposed or initiated while I was there. It was sort of the period after Apollo and after the end of Viking Mars, where it seemed like there just wasn't that much interest in the Congress or in the people of the United States in going to the planets and exploring the planets. And that hurts a place like JPL. And so, now it's totally different. Now there's like so many missions that, they can hardly, take care of all of them. Well, I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean? It's like they have a hard time finding the staffing to do all the stuff they want to do. But then it was sort of like, a lot of people were worried about their jobs, actually. And so that was a kind of tough time for JPL. That was the biggest hurdle for me, not engineering so much. I mean, JPL is the sort of place where, and MIT is sort of like this too, you can almost find somebody who's an expert in anything that you need to do. So you need a better antenna, or you need a better computer, or you can almost always find somebody who like, oh yeah, that's my specialty. And, and that's trust me, now that I don't have that, it's very powerful. Instead of spending a month trying to research, how do you actually just do this one tiny little thing, you just go to the guy who knows how to do it, and he tells you, okay, this is what we did before and it worked, and and you don't want to do it that way because that didn't work, but this way did work, and that saves a huge amount of time.
What was your experience like developing technology for the U.S. Navy?
Well, that was also a lot of fun. I mean, so Erwin Shapiro was one of the inventors of something called very long baseline interferometry. And for much of my career, I have dealt with very long baseline interferometry. And that's how you can make a radio telescope the size of the Earth, or bigger, actually, nowadays. You have antennas in different locations. They look at the same radio source, they record the radio waves, and then you compare the time of arrival of the different waves. And that tells you a lot about where the source is and its structure. And the Event Horizon telescope that gave us the really phenomenal picture of the M87 black hole, that used VLBI. That was a VLBI experiment, telescope. And so VLBI has been developed ever since the 70s, 60s actually, but really since the 70s until now. And the USNO, I was in charge of their VLBI program. And that VLBI program actually is still running. I'm not there, but it's still running, and it's used as part of the calibration system, the navigation system, if you would, for the global positioning system. And they have other customers, but that's a big one. And so if you go out and you use a GPS, like in your cell phone or something, cell phone I mean, but if you use a cell phone and you say GPS, I want to get to, this store over there or something, ultimately that's actually tied back to quasars, which to me is kind of amazing. It's actually tied back to, quasars that are billions of light years away. And it was really kind of an honor to be able to set this thing up, that, we've sort of tied the whole navigation system on the Earth, not the stars, but to things much further away. And the reason we want to do that is because since they're so far away, they don't really move. And so that's their references. You need things that don't move when you want to navigate. And that was, the Navy is the Navy. It's very bureaucratic. It's a big place, but it was not a bad place to work either. So if you're going to do these things, you have to learn how to deal with bureaucracies. Whether you're in the bureaucracy or outside the bureaucracy, you got to learn how to deal with them either way. And sometimes that includes international bureaucracies, which you know, I had the chance to live in Paris, work at the Paris Observatory, and deal with some of the bigger sort of international aspects of the bureaucracy or the system. And that was pretty phenomenal too, I have to say.
What was it like co-founding space initiatives, and what are some of the goals for space initiatives?
Well, what I have to say is I'm going to step up a little bit. I've founded several companies and been involved in the several companies. And being a small company entrepreneur is a lot tougher than it seems like from the outside. It's a lot more demanding. And it's this flip side of JPL. At JPL or MIT, at JPL and MIT, there was always somebody who knew how to do something and would generally do it, a lot of times do it for you. In one of my companies, I found myself writing a printer driver. Why? Because we needed a driver for that printer, and there was nobody else around who had any capability of doing it, so I did it. And it's like, that wasn't my job, except it was my job because you're in a small company, you know, somebody has to do everything. And that can be, it's much more demanding. That's where you really find yourself working, you know, like long hours and stuff. But it has its rewards too. And it gives you the ability to sort of do things the way you think should be done. And that's a hard thing to learn to gain. You know, the ability to say, well, this is what I think should be done, and then try and make it happen. And so we're very excited. I mean, what we're trying to do with space initiatives is to use the power of the small in space. This is a very high level, of course, but to use the power of nanotechnology, microtechnology, the cell phone, the stuff in your cell phone, all that sort of stuff, and put it into space. And we think there's a lot of power there. We think we'll be, you know, deploying fleets of spacecraft to do things that are, you know, grams or tens of grams or maybe a few hundred grams and not tons. We'll still do the tons. If you're going to send people, you have to send tons. But, you know, we think there's a huge potential there for exploring the moon, for exploring the asteroids. And then with Breakthrough Starshot, which is the Breakthrough Starshot is about sending spacecraft of that size all the way out to the stars, all the way out to Alpha Centauri. And there's a whole host of technical problems with that. But, you know, I like dealing with technical problems.
And what do you think the private sector of the space industry will be like 5 to 10 years from now?
I think a lot of the companies that are here now won't be here then. And I think there'll be new companies that sort of come up to replace them. I think, well, I mean, if you know, this is not what I do, but I think there's too many launch companies. There's like several hundred right now, companies that are trying to do launches, like what SpaceX does. And I think the market can maybe support 5 or 10 of them. So there's going to be a shakeout there. But that's not, I mean, in this business, that's not a profound statement. Everybody sort of thinks that way. I think that there are other, like, for example, quantum. I went to a meeting this morning about quantum engineering in space. That's hardly been touched. Quantum key distribution, the quantum network in space, all of this, you know, how you use quantum mechanics, detailed quantum mechanics, entanglement, and so on, to send data, to measure things, and so on. That's hardly been touched. I see a lot of companies coming up in that area. I think a lot of companies will come up in machine learning and things like that. The stuff we, you know, so many people are doing on the ground will be taken into space. So that, remember I said, you might have a whole bunch of small spacecraft going to the moon, let's say, and exploring a particular place, a crater, let's say, or something like that. Well, right now, the model is sort of, they all collect their data, and then somehow that data is all sent back to Earth, and somebody on Earth figures it out. But I think more and more you're going to see machine learning where the system, the swarm of spacecraft up there figures things out and then sends back the results, not just maybe some of the data, but more of the results. Or maybe they'll select what data is actually important and say, well, all this data over here is not really so important, but this data here is crucial. And that's very important. You know, that's going to be a big thing, and I think you're going to see a bunch of companies on that. And it looks like we're really going to the moon to stay. And by we, I mean, you know, the human race. And if that's the case, there'll be all sorts of companies, and this is one of the things that we're trying to be part of. All sorts of companies develop to service that in a bigger sense, provide machinery, provide equipment, provide tools, instruments, and somewhat not too far down the road, provide people with water or oxygen or fuel or whatever it is they need, or maybe even food on the moon. So that, I mean, this is the sort of thing companies tend to be good at. And I think you'll see a lot of companies, as this develops, it's a little early yet, I think you'll see a lot of companies working in the lunar infrastructure area.
And can you specify on quantum communications, the advantages?
Well, one key thing is, and no pun intended, is quantum key distribution. The whole notion of how do you protect secrets? And secrets are not, I mean, they might be military secrets, of course, but they're not necessarily. Think more, you're going to go on Amazon or some other site and you're going to buy something. Well, what does that mean? Well, you put your credit card number in and you put your name in and maybe some other information, and you say to them, I want to buy this thing and it's $50, and they take $50 from your account. Well, all that requires secrecy. You don't want to be doing that in the open. You don't want to be just shouting out, hey, my credit card number is, whatever. And the way we do that now is not likely to survive quantum computing. The protocol that's used actually for HTTPS, the secure, so-called secure web browsing protocol, is likely to be broken soon by quantum computing. When that happens, you're going to need a better way to distribute secrets. The primary secret being a key. You use the way that typically works is you send a key, a long string of digits, but not hugely long, 100 digits maybe. You send this key, which is supposed to be random and supposed to be very hard to guess, and somehow you encrypt that so that I can't read it, and then you send it to the bank. Well, and then the bank sends back to you something that's also encrypted in that way, and then you decrypt it and you say, okay, here's the key. Now we've sent a key back and forth. The bank has my key, I have their key, and now we can just start sending data back and forth encrypted with that. Well, that's likely to be broken soon. And how are you going to fix that? Well, you're going to fix that by sending by quantum key distribution. And that, how do you do that? Well, you send entangled photons back and forth. And space, the sky, is a good way to do that. Particularly if you're talking about doing it internationally, literally overseas, over water. Space is a good way to do that. So I think that's going to be a huge, I mean, I think, the People's Republic of China, for example, is pouring a huge amount of money into this. They've launched satellites and all like this, to the point where I think, that's likely to come out of China more than it is out of here. But then you build on that to build a whole, infrastructure around that. And it's all based on, entangled photons mean correlated photons, so that, I generate photons somehow, a stream of photons, one going this way, one going that way, so that one is, so that they have a, they share polarizations. If one is polarized up, the other is polarized down. And so from that, you can get a random number string, and that random number string is all you really need to start doing this key communication, this key distribution. So the PKI, public key infrastructure, is, I think, going to be a huge development in space, near Earth space, not so much the moon, but near Earth space, very, very soon now.
And what is your message for students like me who are studying to work in the STEM field?
I think it's getting too dark out here. The thing I would say the most is don't be afraid of math, because I think too many kids are afraid of math. Right? Math is your friend here. Math is like music or a language or something. If you learn how to speak it, if you learn how to deal with it, you can do quite a lot of stuff. And so, some people are good at math and it just comes naturally, but a lot of people have to work at it. I had to work at it. And, so don't be afraid of that. It's not, learning math is not really that much different from learning Spanish, say, or something like that. Lots of people do it. You can do it too. But just like learning a foreign language, it unlocks doors. And so if you want to be in space, if you want to be doing physics, if you want to be doing quantum stuff, any of that kind of stuff, math is the underpinning of all of it. And you need a good background in that. There are different types of math you can study, but but don't be afraid of it and sort of embrace it. So that would be my core thing there, my core point there.
Okay, thank you so much for doing this interview, and have a great day. That's my interview with Marshall Eubanks. Thanks for watching the video, and have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.